Market failure post-Brexit, Labour.
What is Brexit?
Brexit, a portmanteau of British and exit, is the term that refers to the United Kingdom's decision to leave the European Union. When did Brexit happen?
UK's decision to leave the EU was made through a public referendum on 23 June 2016, known as the Brexit vote. The outcome revealed a divided nation, with 52% voting in favour of leaving and 48% voting to remain. Negotiations took place between the UK and the EU from 2017 to 2019 on the terms of a divorce deal. There was a transition period following Brexit that expired on December 31st, 2020. Brexit took place on January 31st, 2020, following the June 2016 referendum in the country.
When Britain chose to leave the EU?
Membership of the EU wasn't delivering. Data from the surveys showed that people were happy to be in the EU if it stayed true to its promises: a healthier economy, protection against terrorism and crime, immigration control, good public sector services, and etc. If they did not feel that membership helped deliver these things, or worse still prevented the British government from delivering them, they opposed membership. Many of the latter felt left behind by changes in society and the economy. The global recession of 2008, the UK's inability to recover well from the worst global recession for over 70 years made many feel unhappy and unrepresented in politics. Power disruptions in the Middle East. The civil wars, demonstrations, and loss of political power in the Middle East led to big increases in immigration to Europe. Many people in the UK felt that British governments and the EU Commission had not dealt with the situation well.
Austerity, which refers to the condition of living without unnecessary things and without comfort, with limited money or goods, etc. Professor Whiteley believes austerity did not work, delaying economic recovery both in Europe and Britain. The Double Leave campaign. The study found that the two political campaigns to leave the EU appealed to two types of voters. The official campaign, led by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, was attractive to voters who saw themselves as respectable and conservative. In addition, there was an official campaign led by Nigel Farage, which appealed to those people who felt excluded from the system. This gave double strength to the Leave campaign's message.
What rules changed? Labour, freedom to work and live between the UK and the EU. As of 2021, UK nationals will need a visa if they want to stay in the EU for more than 90 days in a 180-day period.
Trade of goods. There will be no taxes on goods or limits on the amount that can be traded between the UK and the EU from 1 January 2021 that comply with the appropriate rules of origin. However, some new checks will be introduced at borders, such as safety checks and custom declarations. Trade of services. UK service suppliers will face some restrictions. In order to offer services across the EU, the UK may need to establish themselves in the EU to continue operating. They must comply with domestic rules, procedures, and authorizations applicable to their activities in each member state where they operate.
What did the government fail to project?
Trade disruptions. The UK government underestimated the impact of leaving the EU in terms of trade. The EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement, TCA, that increased red tape, bureaucracy, and costs, as well as shipping and transport issues, led to increased costs and delays for businesses, disrupting supply chains. Such increases led to both shortages of products as well as inflation in the UK. Investment. The UK overestimated the ability to attract foreign direct investments. Following Brexit, the uncertainties surrounding trade agreements and regulations between the UK and the EU led to a lack of confidence for FDI. Labour market effects. The impact on labour markets was also underestimated. The Brexit led to shortages in sectors reliant on EU labour such as agriculture and hospitality, and contributed to wage pressures and higher costs, which is later passed on to consumers as higher prices. Such inflation results in a wage price spiral as workers demand higher wages to match the higher living costs.
Regulatory costs. The costs associated with implementing new regulations were underestimated. Businesses had to navigate new compliance requirements, which added to operational costs. Economic growth. The UK overestimated the potential for economic growth following Brexit. The benefits from the new trade agreements and regulatory freedoms were slower to materialize than expected. While the economic uncertainty had a negative effect on growth, in addition to the previously mentioned outcome that the UK failed to project, the COVID-19 pandemic also reduced economic growth with lockdowns occurring.
What are the effects on employment?
while there have been strikes and higher pay settlements, there is still a substantial gap between how fast pay is going up and the pace of price increases.
Looks at it by party as well, and it shows that for Conservative voters, immigration was the number one issue. Immigration is something people associate with Brexit.
Good morning.
That is a problem for Rishi Sunak when there's still 29,000 people who came via small boat last year. And of course, legal net migration at record numbers.
Comes to the issue of migration, of course, we took back control. And since we left the EU, the government's had control over that policy area. So really, they need to be held to account for that.
Brexit has led to a shortfall of 330,000 people in the UK labour force, mostly in the low-skilled economy. The post-Brexit points immigration system has by design made it more difficult for those without qualifications to move to the UK to work. The system came into force in January 2021, and by June 2022 there was a shortfall of 460,000 EU workers.
The shifts in immigration patterns pose the most important cyclical repercussions for the UK economy, and inflation in particular. The Brexit led to shortages in sectors reliant on EU labour, such as agriculture and hospitality, and contributed to wage pressures and higher costs, which is later passed on to consumers as higher prices. Such inflation results in a wage price spiral as workers demand higher wages to match the higher living costs.
What policies should the government implement?
Work permits and qualifications should be analyzed more closely to avoid job mismatch, which may disrupt the economy's productivity. The government should have sufficient information regarding the job vacancies in different industries across the UK. Establish professional mobility arrangements to encourage higher productivity by gaining more work experience through work exchange programs. Create a policy that requires firms to update the number of job vacancies and shortages to be submitted to the government quarterly.
Invest in stronger security to patrol bodies of water to avoid illegal immigrants through boat crossing. Establish stronger multilateral agreements. Prior to Brexit in 2020, Britain's membership of the EU allowed the country to return asylum seekers to other EU member states they had traveled from, including France, under a pact known as the Dublin Agreement.
Thank you.